and how actually your art, your production process affected this ephemerality and like, I'm sorry, it was pretty fast, so I need to check.
No worries.
Yes.
In the meantime, I would make a clarification.
Yes.
So I'm representing Vils, Alexander Farto, aka Vils, who was the artist behind the Doors of Cairo artwork, but I am not Alexander. I'm working with him, and then I'm the head of the art department of the Vils studio, and work together with his team of 50 people to create that art piece.
Mert, maybe you can also, if you want, introduce yourself a bit.
Hello,
I skipped that part, I'm sorry.
It's no problem, we are in a rush. My name is Mert, and I'm one of the artists in the Forever is Now 5th edition. So I'm representing myself.
That was good. So we will be talking, as I told you, the permanence versus ephemerality. And I would like to start with my first question, ladies first, let's say. How does your, so Will's practice, reinterpret legacy and time, since we are in front of a huge legacy of the history from the ancient civilizations to our contemporary times? Let's talk a brief about this.
So Vils very actively in his practice exposes layers. This is like a repeated pattern, layers of history, of physical layers, and also human. So he's using and working with discarded everyday objects of doors, of walls, and when he's like erodes them or carves into them, he's removing layers of history throughout this process. So he's bringing forward the past in this process of creation, and while he's doing it, he's bringing the memory and the history of those objects also on the surface. So I think for him, the legacy, and I share this view, is something that is not static. So it's relation to time, it's rather an active, ongoing process of creation, and it's something that we keep experiencing in the moment.
So we're talking about actually a controlled destruction. Let's say when he's doing the stuff, controlled destruction is part of his work.
Of course, I mean there is a level of control, but when you are kind of like an archaeologist, when you are exposing new layers and layers and layers, you don't know sometimes as an artist or as a creator what you reveal. So it's part of a very active process of exposing, recovering, discovering, and creation, I believe.
It's very good. Now I'm changing the direction so it could be more dynamic. My question is to you, how does your practice reinterpret legacy and time? Like how are you defining, how are you making comments on the heritage of the pyramids and time?
Well, actually my works or my alphabet always referring a legacy of a philosophy. So actually the philosophy behind my artwork or behind my personal alphabet is based on the ancient Greek philosophers. Then also touched the Sufism and the modern philosophy too. So my legacy is actually based on the mankind's philosophy. The pyramids are such a good example of executing something, because the execution is kind of a motivation to people to live. Why we are executing the things. Because I think, this is my belief, so people are, or the people know that they're going to have an end. So they would like to be endless, like the Hegel says. So we are always trying to do something that makes us to live or live our name forever. So I think this is a contrast being immortal and immortal. So a legacy is just a fine line between to be here or not to be here. So my works are always having a conversation based on legacy in that perspective.
Which brings me to my next question, basically, because both of you were talking about transformation, basically, to deal with the legacy, deal with the time, also life and death, those kind of life cycles, let's say. And let's a bit talk about how you're seeing this transformation, how your art transformed the area of the Giza Plateau, and what are the challenging parts of the production process or the preparations to the exhibition. So it's kind of like a general artistic question.
Well, I think the site itself is, of course, an extremely special place, and it is something that when we were there, Alexander wanted to bring to the kind of permanence, the monumental permanence of the Giza Plateau, a contemporary monument that is bringing a level of human presence and nature into the location. So some of the doors he have carved were from the city of Giza. They have like their own memories, their own traces of history. They have, you mentioned the word endurance, like they have lived through times of people, thousands of people or hundreds of people have touched them, have used them, have neglected them. And in the creation process, he brings them to the public, these very, very private, intimate objects that are in our houses. And one of the aim is to start a dialogue between the monumental permanence of the legacy and also to give a human factor by bringing these intimate objects into a public space. And by then, start a dialogue between this contrasting time.
Very good example of transformation as well. So, Mert, since I know your practice very well, and you all have these public space sculptures in, let's say, most of the places in the MENA region, how was the experience of putting your work into the Giza Plateau? What was the challenging part of it, rather than comparing to the other squares, public spaces, and?
Well, actually, it's for me more than creating an image. I designed an experience. So when you are planning to design an experience, such a place like you have the pyramids and the Giza Plateau, it's actually huge. So I know, let's call it the enemy. So I know the enemy has no weak point with the scales, because it's going to beat me. I know it. So then I first selected the place which the pyramids are aligned, because I would like to make them smaller.
So you need to create the backdrop, the landscape.
Yes, because when you just, through that narrow point, when you see lots of pyramid images around, so my work is going to seem much smaller. So I use an antique technique and use the perspective. So first I make the pyramids look smaller. Then I select a scale that a person could feel themselves smaller. Because normally we are living in the apartments and the standard is 2.8, 3 meters. So I selected 4.5. It's like a high ceiling building. And I set up 2 parallel mirrors to make that place seem bigger. So these are the techniques that I use to make my artwork shouts more. So I can say, okay, it was hard, but as the legacy says, this is not the philosophical legacy, this is the technical legacy that we are taking as a sculptor students or the artist. We learn the classic techniques too. We know the people what did in the Renaissance or the Baroque or the Greece time or ancient Egypt. So I use the techniques, I use the legacy of my ancestor sculptors, and I use the legacy of the ancestor philosophers. So actually it's a sculpture that I use everybody. I use everything, I can say.
It's a very good answer. I think my final question is just like came to my mind, because both of your work is also about the muscle work as well. The doors, they need to be carved, the graffiti is something that do you need muscle work to do it? And also your work is, I know that it's repetitive, you need a lot to, you did the welding and so on, so muscle work is also there. By giving a reference to the ancient muscle work and ancient engineering, how are you seeing your relationship with the, let's say, contemporary technologies and also the ancient engineering? Maybe it's a bit like, for you, it could be seen from another perspective, because he also got into the streets of Cairo, he collected some doors, but then again he used his muscle work to do it. So from that kind of perspective, how are you seeing the relationship?
Part of our team with Alex traveled here weeks before the installation. We sourced the doors, we found the workshop where they were carved, and also the installation process was, we used all the time we had on site. In parallel, of course, the process starts always from Alex and ends with it. So he's the creative director in every part of the process, and in parallel, I would say, with the legacy of the pyramids, or kind of when you are installing on this venue, it's inevitable to don't like confront with the scale of time that certain processes of artistic creation takes, and of course the legacy that is outlives. Of course, this is like a temporary exhibition and a temporary piece, but I think when we are looking at its effect of the artwork and what they bring to our life is where the weight of the impact, where it matters, this kind of lasting process and lasting memory of it.
Thank you.
Can I ask the question again?
I knew that. The question was about the muscle work, and how are you seeing yourself from the perspective of ancient engineering and the contemporary technologies that we're using? Because both of the works, they use muscle work.
Okay. Well, I find a similar side with the Pyramids and my work, because they're both made in a so common material. So I choose the most common material you can find. It's just an aluminum profile. You can find it anywhere around the world, and you know the price is global, and you know what to do. Technique is so easy. Like the Pyramids. You just put the blocks on and on and on. So I think more than muscle power, I believe engineering. Because of, I'm not a painter, I'm a sculptor, I always into more engineering, because the material always makes the line, define the limits what you are going to do. So I think more than muscle power, I believe the engineering, like the Pyramids, because there's 2,000 workers working on that, but none of them design or engineer the pyramid. They just carry the blocks. So if every man can do it, and if it's going to be a significant thing, then it's a mind. So more than muscle, I believe in the mind and engineering and designing power. So.
Thank you for participating. I think it's better to have some questions if you have, since you know both of the works of the artists. Feel free to ask anything you want. Avec pleasure.
A question, I guess, and more of just like a thought, a provocation maybe. Welcome to interpret how you want. I just found it really interesting in both of the works. This idea of liminal space came up for me, or the idea of portals. And I wonder if there's any intentionality in that. So in that gap, in that sort of, I guess you'd call it a hallway space, or the notion of doors as liminal spaces and portals, I was curious if that came up for either in terms of thinking about this sort of bridge between past, present, and future. I like liminal space, so maybe I'm imposing myself, I don't know, but yeah.
Well, in Alex's body of work, or Will's body of work, portals have been present. Actually, he had a few years ago an exhibition called Portal in Bologna, and he had door compositions installed in a church. But in this case, the word did not come. When we were talking with the curatorial team, with him, the word it did not come up, but indeed, the doors as a symbolism is not just in time, but in a kind of reflection, I think, in this reading of him wanting to reflect, wanting the audience to reflect on the doors, how they are, what does it represent for them in themselves? Like, is it a door, is an opening to enter something, or is it something that you exit? How do you reflect on doors, and how you can see yourself, not as a door, but like in position or in front of the artwork, like it encourages you to be open and to look back, but at the same time to project forward. So in that case, I could see it as a portal, in contrast with the history and the site it has.
Oh, well, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a question, so this is going to maybe sound different, but
I'm just trying to win some time, man. I actually remember the question, but I'm still trying to figure out.
No, it was just more this observation around the idea of a liminal space, like a portal, an entryway, an exitway, and I just felt that resonated in both works. For yours, it was that gap, that sort of looking
Yes.
at. So I was just curious if that was intentional, if that was something you thought about.
But actually,
Yeah.
when I was designing the experience, I never mentioned to make a gateway. I want people to stop there. It's like, it's more than a gate. I would like it to be more than a limbo. Just standing there. Like the limbo, you can't go anywhere front or back. So I basically try to create a limbo. I always define that it's a personal ritual place. So it's like a place that you can go pray or whatever you want, but I want you to stop in it and think in it, because as I told you before, I engineered something else too, with the nature, because the gap works like a wind tunnel. So when you step into the sculpture, you are going to feel the wind more than outside. So there's a heat shields in the balls, so it's going to be cold when you go inside. So with the wind and the heat shields, you are going to feel yourself in a different place with your infinite reflection front of the pyramids. So I don't want people to go anywhere from that point. I want them to stay in there. Have you stepped into it? Yeah. Okay, good.
That's why I asked.
Okay. You're still here, so it's not a portal.
I guess. I mean, I wish.
Thank you. Do you have other questions? Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you.